My parents gave my wedding fund to my brother for his business venture because sons carry the family name. 3 years later, his business flopped and he filed for bankruptcy. Last week, he asked me to co-sign a loan. I handed him a napkin with the exact amount they took from me and said, "Ask your last name for help." My mom started sobbing. My brother called me 3 nights ago asking if I'd co-sign a $50,000 loan, and I laughed so hard I started choking on my wine. Some context. I'm 29, he's 35. When I was 22 and planning my wedding, my parents sat me down and told me they were giving my $30,000 wedding fund to my brother instead. He had this once-in-a-lifetime business opportunity selling premium car accessories online. My dad literally said, "Your husband will pay for the wedding. Your brother needs to build something that carries our family name forward." I was devastated. My fiancé and I ended up doing a courthouse wedding with dinner at Olive Garden after. It was nice enough, but it wasn't what I dreamed about since I was little. My parents didn't even come. They were too busy helping my brother set up his warehouse space. Fast forward 3 years. The business tanked. Turned out premium car accessories meant cheap floor mats from Alibaba that fell apart after 2 weeks. My brother got hit with thousands in refund requests and bad reviews. Last year he filed for bankruptcy. Lost everything, including the house he bought with the business profits before it all went south. My parents bailed him out of that too. Paid off $15,000 in legal fees and let him move back home rent-free. Meanwhile, I've been working 2 jobs trying to save up for a house with my husband. So when my brother called asking me to co-sign this loan so he could start fresh with a new business idea, crypto trading, I shit you not, I completely lost it. I told him I'd think about it and hung up. The next day was Sunday dinner at my parents' house. My brother brought it up in front of everyone, saying he really needed family support during this difficult time. My mom immediately jumped in with Family Helps Family and looked right at me. I went to the kitchen and wrote something on a napkin. Came back and slid it across the table to my brother. It said, $30,000. Ask your last name for help. The table went silent. My brother's face turned red and he shoved the napkin away. My dad asked what that was supposed to mean. I said it meant I hadn't forgotten that sons carry the family name, and apparently that means they carry all the family money too. My mom started crying. Full on sobbing. She said I was being cruel and holding a grudge over something they did to help my brother succeed. I told her he didn't succeed, he failed, and now he wanted to drag my credit score down with him when he failed again. My brother stood up and called me a selfish bitch. Said I never supported his dreams and I was jealous he took risks while I played it safe. I reminded him his risks cost our parents $45,000 and counting, and the only thing I was jealous of was that he got a family who actually gave a damn about his future. My dad told me to leave. Said I wasn't welcome back until I apologized for disrespecting my brother and making my mother cry. I grabbed my purse and left. My husband says I did the right thing, but maybe I was too harsh with the napkin. My aunt, Dad's sister, called me yesterday and said the whole family is upset with me. Apparently my brother is telling everyone I threw his bankruptcy in his face to humiliate him, and my mom hasn't stopped crying since Sunday. But honestly, I don't feel bad. They made their choice 7 years ago about whose future mattered. Now he wants me to risk my financial stability for his third chance while I'm still recovering from having no first chance. My sister-in-law, brother's wife, forgot to mention he got married 2 years ago and a $40,000 wedding my parents helped pay for, sent me a long text about how family means sacrifice and forgiveness. I didn't respond. So I guess I'm asking, was the napkin thing too far? Should I have just said no privately instead of calling him out in front of everyone? My parents are saying I ruined dinner and hurt everyone's feelings over old history. Am I a butthole? So the napkin thing blew up way bigger than I expected. My phone didn't stop for 3 days straight. Aunts, uncles, cousins I haven't talked to in years, all texting me about how I humiliated my brother and broke my mother's heart. My dad's brother called me and spent 20 minutes lecturing me about respecting my elders and letting go of grudges. I finally told him if he cared so much about my brother's loan he could co-sign it himself. He hung up on me. My husband was pissed. Not at me, at them. He wanted to call my parents and tell them exactly what he thought about the wedding fund situation, but I stopped him. Told him it would just make everything worse. He said it couldn't get worse than my entire family ganging up on me for refusing to destroy our credit for someone who already proved he can't handle money. He was wrong about it not getting worse. Thursday night my brother showed up at our apartment. Just knocked on the door at almost 10 p.m. like it was normal. My husband answered and I heard him say she doesn't want to talk to you, but my brother pushed past him and came into our living room anyway. He looked terrible. Hadn't shaved, wearing the same hoodie he had on at Sunday dinner. He said we needed to talk and I needed to stop being selfish. I told him to get out. He refused. Said he wasn't leaving until I agreed to help him because he was desperate and I was the only one who could co-sign since our parents' credit was maxed out from helping him before. That's when I found out the real reason he needed the loan. It wasn't for crypto. He owes $38,000 to someone he borrowed from for the original business. Some private lender who's threatening legal action. The $50,000 loan was supposed to pay that off and give him enough left over to invest his way out of the hole. I asked him if our parents knew about the private lender. He said no and begged me not to tell them. Said they'd already sacrificed enough for him and he couldn't disappoint them again. I actually laughed. Told him that was rich coming from the guy who pissed away $30,000 of my money and came back for more. He lost it. Started yelling about how it wasn't my money, it was family money, and our parents chose to invest it in someone who actually had ambition instead of someone who just wanted a party in a white dress. My husband got between us and told him to leave or he'd call the cops. My brother shoved him. Not hard, but enough that my husband stumbled back. Then he turned to me and said, "You're really going to let me lose everything because you're still bitter about a wedding? Grow up." I don't even remember deciding to do it. I pulled out my phone and called my dad right there. Put it on speaker. When he answered, I said, "Did you know your son owes $38,000 to a private lender and that's why he needs the loan?" The silence was so loud. My brother went pale. Started shaking his head at me, mouthing, "Please don't." But I was done protecting him. My dad asked if that was true. My brother grabbed for my phone but my husband blocked him. I told my dad everything my brother had just said, including the part about their credit being maxed out and him planning to invest the loan money instead of actually starting a legitimate business. My dad asked to talk to my brother. I handed him the phone. My brother took it off speaker and walked into our hallway. I could hear him talking but couldn't make out the words. When he came back and he looked like he might throw up. He handed me my phone, didn't look at either of us, and left. My dad called me back 10 minutes later. Said he and my mom were coming over Saturday to talk. I said there was nothing to talk about unless they were ready to apologize for the wedding fund and admit they played favorites for years. He said we'll discuss it Saturday and hung up. I haven't slept much since then. My husband thinks this might actually be good, that maybe my parents are finally seeing how bad my brother's gotten. But I keep thinking about my mom sobbing at that dinner table and wondering if I just made everything 10 times worse for myself. My brother hasn't contacted me again. But his wife sent me another text yesterday. Said I betrayed him by telling our dad about the private lender and now he might have to declare bankruptcy again. Said I should be ashamed of myself for kicking him while he's down. I blocked her number. Saturday's tomorrow. I have no idea what my parents want to say, but I'm not apologizing for the napkin and I'm definitely not co-signing anything. My husband says we should set boundaries before they come over, make it clear what we will and won't discuss. I think he's right, but I'm also terrified this is just going to end with them disowning me or something. Part of me wishes I just said no privately when my brother called about the loan. But another part of me is glad I finally stopped protecting him from the consequences of his own choices. Is it wrong that I told my dad about the private lender? My brother says I violated his trust and made everything worse for him. Was I supposed to just keep it secret while he tried to drag me down with him? Saturday destroyed what was left of my relationship with my parents. They showed up at 2 p.m. like they said they would. My mom looked exhausted, red eyes like she'd been crying for days. My dad's jaw was tight, that look he gets when he's trying to stay calm but is actually furious. My husband offered them coffee but they both said no. We sat in the living room and nobody talked for at least a minute. Finally my dad said they needed to address what happened Thursday night. I waited for him to apologize for everything, for the wedding fund, for always choosing my brother, for letting things get this bad. Instead he said I had no right to expose my brother's private financial situation and that I betrayed his trust as his sister. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told him my brother showed up at my home uninvited, shoved my husband, and tried to manipulate me into co-signing a loan for debt he'd been hiding from everyone. My dad said that didn't give me permission to humiliate him by calling and telling them everything while my brother was standing right there. My mom started crying again. Said she didn't raise me to be vindictive and cruel. That watching me hurt my brother was breaking her heart. I asked her if it broke her heart when they took my wedding fund. She flinched like I'd slapped her. My dad said we were not relitigating the wedding fund, that decision was made years ago and I needed to move on. I told him I had moved on, I'd built a life without their help, but that didn't mean I was going to let my brother ruin my financial future because he made bad choices with money they should have given me in the first place. That's when my dad admitted why they really came over. They wanted me to loan my brother $20,000. Not co-sign, just give him the money directly. Said they'd pay me back within 2 years once they refinanced the house. I actually laughed out loud. Asked if they were serious. My mom said it was the only way to keep my brother from losing everything and possibly going to jail if the private lender took legal action. She said as a family we needed to come together to protect him. My husband cut in before I could respond. Told them absolutely not, that we were saving for a house and we weren't liquidating our savings for someone who'd already proven he couldn't handle money. My dad told him this was a family matter and he should stay out of it. Wrong thing to say. My husband stood up and said he was family, legally and actually, unlike them who only seemed to remember they had a daughter when they needed something from her. Said they'd made it clear 7 years ago that I didn't matter as much as my brother and now they were proving it again. My dad stood up too. Told my husband he was being disrespectful and if he couldn't control himself maybe we should have this conversation another time. My husband said there was nothing to discuss because the answer was no and would always be no. My mom turned to me, completely ignoring my husband. Begged me to reconsider. Said my brother made mistakes but he was still my brother and he needed help. I told her I needed help 7 years ago and she chose him then too. She said that was different, that was just a wedding, this was his entire future. Just a wedding. Those 3 words made something snap inside me. I asked her if she remembered my wedding day. She looked confused. I said of course she didn't remember it because she wasn't there. Neither of them were. They were helping my brother move inventory into his warehouse while I signed papers at a courthouse in a dress I bought off the clearance rack at Macy's. My mom started crying harder. Said I was being cruel on purpose, trying to make her feel guilty for supporting my brother's dreams. I told her I wasn't trying to make her feel anything, I was just stating facts. They chose him over me then and they were doing it again now. My dad said if I wasn't going to help then we had nothing else to discuss. Started walking toward the door. My mom followed him but turned back and said when your brother loses everything, I hope you can live with yourself knowing you had the power to prevent it. I told her I'd sleep just fine. They left. My husband immediately wrapped me in a hug because I was shaking. Not crying, just shaking with anger and adrenaline. He kept saying I did the right thing, that I didn't owe them anything. But here's the worst part. About an hour after they left, my brother's wife called from her number even though I'd blocked it, she used a different phone. Screamed at me that I was a selfish, heartless bitch who was going to ruin her family. Said my brother came home after talking to our parents and had a complete breakdown, that he's been having panic attacks because the private lender is threatening to sue. She said their kids are going to suffer because of me. That's when I found out they have 2 kids, ages 4 and 18 months. I didn't even know about the second one. Nobody told me when he was born. I hung up on her. But it's been eating at me since Saturday. My brother has kids who might suffer because of his debt. But I keep thinking that's not my fault, that's his fault for making bad choices. My husband agrees but says I seem upset. I am upset. Not because I feel guilty about saying no, but because my parents really came here expecting me to hand over $20,000 like the last 7 years didn't happen. Like I was supposed to just forget everything and rescue my brother again. My aunt called this morning. The one who lectured me before. Said the whole family knows I refuse to help and everyone thinks I'm being selfish. That my brother might actually go to jail and it'll be my fault. I don't think he'll actually go to jail but I don't know how any of this works. Should I feel worse about this than I do? My brother showed up at my job yesterday. I work at a dental office doing billing and insurance claims. It's a small practice, just 2 dentists and 4 staff including me. We have a waiting room with glass windows facing the front desk where I sit. Around 11 a.m. I looked up from my computer and he was just standing there staring at me through the glass. My stomach dropped. I hadn't seen him since he shoved my husband 2 weeks ago. He looked worse than before, like he hadn't slept in days. One of the dentists noticed him and asked if I knew him. I said he was my brother and I'd handle it. I went outside. Asked him what he was doing here. He said he'd been calling and texting but I blocked him so he didn't have a choice. I told him he always had a choice and showing up at my workplace wasn't it. He said we needed to talk and it couldn't wait. I looked back through the window. My coworkers were all watching. I walked him around the side of the building where there's a small parking lot. Told him he had 5 minutes. He started crying immediately. Said the private lender filed a lawsuit last week and his lawyer says he's going to lose. That he'll have to liquidate everything, maybe even his wife's car since it's in both their names. He said his kids are going to suffer and it's going to be my fault. I told him his kids are suffering because of his choices, not mine. He said I had the power to stop this and I was choosing not to help out of spite. I asked him if our parents told him to come here. He didn't answer, just kept crying and saying he was desperate. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. Said if I gave him the $20,000 he'd tell our parents the truth about the wedding fund. That he'd admit he convinced them to give it to him instead of splitting it like they originally planned. I had no idea they'd planned to split it. I asked him what he meant. He wiped his face and said the original plan was $15,000 for my wedding and $15,000 for his business. But he convinced them I didn't need that much money for a wedding and he needed the full amount to make his business successful. Said he promised them he'd pay them back double within 5 years so they could give me the money later. I felt like I couldn't breathe. All these years I thought they just chose him over me. But he actively manipulated them into taking my half too. I asked him if he ever planned to tell me. He said it didn't matter anymore, what mattered was helping him now. That if I gave him the money he'd come clean to our parents and I'd finally get the apology I wanted. I told him to get the fuck away from me. He grabbed my arm and squeezed hard. Said I owed him this, that I ruined his life by telling our dad about the private lender and now I needed to fix it. I tried to pull away but he wouldn't let go. One of the dentists, the older one who's worked there for 30 years, came outside. Asked if everything was okay. My brother dropped my arm immediately. I said he was just leaving. The dentist didn't move, just stood there watching my brother until he walked back to his car and drove off. When I came back inside, everyone was quiet. My boss, the other dentist, called me into her office. Asked if I was safe, if I needed to call the police. I told her what happened, all of it. She said if he came back she'd call the cops herself and that I should probably file a report anyway. I didn't file a report. I don't know why. Maybe because he's still my brother and some stupid part of me doesn't want to get him in more trouble. My husband says I'm being too soft, that my brother physically grabbed me and I should have called the police right there. But that's not even the worst part of yesterday. Last night my mom called. Not my dad, just her. She was calm, too calm. Said she heard my brother came to see me at work and it didn't go well. I asked her if she knew he was going to do that. She said they discussed it as a family and decided it might help if he talked to me alone, without them there. I asked her if she knew about the wedding fund, about how it was supposed to be split. The silence went on forever. Then she said he told you. Not a question. A statement. She admitted they originally planned to give us each $15,000. Said my brother convinced them I'd be fine with a smaller wedding and he really needed the investment. But she insisted they didn't know he wasn't going to pay them back, that they genuinely believed he'd give me the money later once his business took off. I asked her why she never told me. She said because after the business failed they were ashamed and didn't want to make things worse. That they knew I was hurt but they thought it was better to let it go than to admit they'd been manipulated by their own son. I told her that was bullshit. That they chose to protect his feelings over mine for 7 years. She started crying and said they made mistakes but they were trying their best. I asked her if sending him to my job to grab me and threaten me was their best. She went quiet again. Asked what I meant by grab me. I told her he grabbed my arm and wouldn't let go until someone intervened. She said that didn't sound like him, that I must be exaggerating. I hung up. This morning I woke up to 17 missed calls from my dad and a voicemail from my brother's wife. I haven't listened to any of them. My husband wants me to get a restraining order. I think that might be extreme but I don't know anymore. My arm still has a bruise where my brother grabbed me. It's not big but it's there. I took a picture of it just in case. My coworker, the one who's been there the longest, said I should document everything because this kind of thing usually gets worse before it gets better. I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to call my parents and tell them everything my brother did. But another part of me knows they'll just make excuses for him like they always do. My brother's wife filed for divorce 3 days ago. I found out through my aunt, the same one who kept lecturing me about family loyalty. She called yesterday morning sounding shaken and said I needed to know what was happening. Apparently my brother's wife discovered he'd been hiding even more debt than anyone knew about. The $38,000 to the private lender was just part of it. He owes almost $90,000 total across multiple credit cards, personal loans, and the private lender. She had no idea until the lawsuit forced everything into the open. She's taking the kids and moving in with her parents. Filed an emergency motion for full custody because my brother had some kind of breakdown last week and trashed their apartment. Police were called. There's a report. My aunt said all of this like she was confessing something, like she finally understood why I'd been refusing to help. She apologized for pressuring me. Said she didn't know how bad things really were and that my brother had been lying to everyone for years. I didn't know what to say to her. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated but mostly I just felt hollow. My parents haven't called me since I hung up on my mom. But my dad showed up at our apartment last night around 8 p.m. Alone. My husband answered the door and I heard him say she doesn't want to see you but my dad said he'd wait outside all night if he had to. I told my husband to let him in. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 2 weeks. Sat on our couch and didn't say anything for a while. Finally he told me he was sorry. Not sorry for coming over uninvited, sorry for everything. The wedding fund, the years of putting my brother first, sending him to my job, all of it. He said when my brother grabbed me at work something clicked for him. That he'd been making excuses for my brother his whole life and it nearly cost him his daughter. He said my mom was devastated, that she'd barely left their bedroom since finding out about my brother's breakdown in the divorce filing. I asked him if he knew about the $90,000 in total debt. He closed his eyes and nodded. Said they found out 2 days ago when my brother's wife sent them copies of everything during the divorce filing. That my brother had been taking out loans and credit cards for years, always promising he was about to make it big with the next investment or business idea. He said they were done helping him. That they'd enabled him into his 30s and watched him destroy his own family because of it. He looked at me and said I'm sorry we destroyed ours too. I started crying. Not because I forgave him, but because hearing him finally admit it made me realize how much I'd needed that for 7 years. My husband sat next to me and held my hand. My dad said they were going to sell the house. That they're too old to keep up with the mortgage anyway and they want to give me $15,000 from the sale. Not as a loan, just giving it to me. Said it won't make up for the wedding fund but it's what they should have done years ago. I told him I didn't want their money. He said he knew I didn't, but he was asking me to take it anyway because he needed to do something right by me before it was too late. He said my mom wanted to come too but she was too ashamed to face me. Before he left, he told me my brother was moving back in with them temporarily while the divorce goes through. Said I didn't have to worry about him coming near me again, that he'd made it very clear to my brother that if he contacted me or came to my job again, he'd call the police himself. After my dad left, my husband asked me how I felt. I told him I honestly didn't know. Relief maybe, or grief for the relationship I wish I'd had with my parents all along. This morning I got an email from my brother. Just 2 sentences. I'm sorry for everything. You were right about me. I haven't responded and I don't plan to. Some apologies come too late. My coworkers have been really supportive. My boss told me yesterday that she's proud of how I handled everything and that standing up for yourself is never the wrong choice. The dentist who came outside when my brother grabbed me brought me coffee this morning and didn't ask any questions, just gave me a hug. My husband and I talked last night about what we want to do with our savings now that we're not worried about my family asking for money anymore. We're still planning to buy a house, maybe within the next year if we keep saving. He said we should take a trip first though, somewhere we've never been, just the 2 of us. I think he's right. I don't know if I'll ever have a real relationship with my parents again. My dad's apology meant something, but it doesn't erase 7 years of feeling like I didn't matter as much as my brother. And my mom still can't face me, which tells me she's more ashamed of how she looks than actually sorry for what she did. My brother is going to have to live with the consequences of his choices. His wife is gone, his kids will grow up in a broken home, and he's drowning in debt he'll probably never pay off. I know I'm supposed to feel bad for him, but I don't. He had so many chances to be honest, to ask for real help, to stop digging himself deeper. Instead, he tried to drag me down with him. The bruise on my arm faded after a few days, but I still have the picture. I showed it to a lawyer just in case, got advice on restraining orders if I need one. The lawyer said what my brother did was assault and I could press charges if I wanted to. I told her I'd think about it. I probably won't press charges. Not because he doesn't deserve it, but because I'm tired of my life revolving around him and his problems. I want to move forward, buy our house, take that trip with my husband, build the life I should have had 7 years ago. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if they'd just split the wedding fund like they originally planned. If my brother would have failed anyway with $15,000 instead of $30,000, if I'd still be close with my parents, if any of this could have been avoided. But then I remember the napkin I handed him at that dinner table and I don't regret it. He needed to hear that his last name wasn't going to save him anymore. That some of us had to build our lives without family money and turned out fine. I'm done protecting people who wouldn't protect me. I'm done feeling guilty for having boundaries. And I'm definitely done putting my brother's future ahead of my own. My parents can sell their house and give me the money if it makes them feel better. I'll probably take it because my dad's right, it won't fix anything but it's something. But I'm not holding my breath waiting for my mom to apologize or for my brother to actually change. I've spent 7 years being angry about a wedding fund. I'm not spending another 7 waiting for my family to become people they're never going to be.